So this lesson in particular is very much a absolute basics. When we titled this the absolute basics, we meant the absolute basics. So many of you are probably just going to want to skip this and go to the next section, but some of you are just getting into this for the first time, and welcome. Okay, you're going to find very soon that the better you get at using these skills, okay, the better you get as a prompt engineer, the more and more you're going to feel like a wizard. Okay, commanding these AI models is super fun. You can do all sorts of things with them. So, very excited that you finally jumped into this, and we want to make sure that we cover a few things here to help make the rest of our material a little bit more approachable. So let's, at the very top here, let's just talk a little bit about prompting. And you know what? Even before that, let's talk a little bit about what you see on my screen. So I am on the OpenAI Playground. This is a tool that we'll cover in the next section, but I just want to give you a little bit of context about what you're looking at, because I think, when you see all of these options and this UI, I think things can look a little bit overwhelming, a little bit there's just so much going on here that we don't want to overwhelm you. Okay. So all we have open here is basically an environment on OpenAI's website that allows us to create prompts and test them. That's really all you're seeing here. And all of these different options are just ways to tweak the model. And there are actually more that we need to tweak here, which you'll see as we get going in the upcoming sections here. So really, this isn't anywhere near as complex as it looks, but that's kind of what we're looking at, and you're going to get much more familiar with a tool like this as we go on. Okay, so let's talk about prompting. What is prompting? So prompting is almost a programming language of sorts, but instead of having to write code, you're just talking in natural language. And instead of running and executing code, you're basically trying to run and execute your natural language prompts. Okay, so just, your plain old English or whatever language you speak, just to keep things simple here, where, we may use natural language and plain English and things like that. I speak English, I'm an English speaker, so we're going to try and keep things consistent there. But what you're effectively trying to do with whatever natural language prompt that you give the AI model, right, is you're trying to get the model to do some sort of task, right? You're trying to get it to do the thing that you commanded it to do, right? It's sort of, you can think of a prompt as a set of instructions for an AI model. You can think of a prompt as sort of a natural language, almost piece of code that you're trying to get an AI model to run, in a sense, right? I do think that, fundamentally, you just want to think of a prompt as instructions that you give to an AI model, right? And the reason that we do things like prompt engineering is because it turns out that the way that you speak to the model, the way that you construct that prompt, the way that you construct those instructions can pretty radically alter not only the types of things that the models can do, but how well they can do them, even things like how fast they can do them, right? And so if you're trying to maximize the power of the model, you want to be a good prompter. If you want to maximize kind of the breadth, the wide range of tasks that a model can do, you want to be a good prompter, right? The idea is that the better you get as a prompt engineer, the more power and the more abilities that you'll be able to kind of use these models for. And so it's very much a skill that's, you could think of it kind of as a meta skill. It's kind of a skill that improves all your other skills with working with AI models. And so prompting is kind of the core way that you interface with these things. There's sort of natural language to, whatever sort of output that you want to get to from an AI model, and prompting is the way that you get there. Okay, so prompting, again, just think of it as instructions that you give an AI model to get it to do something that you want to do. Okay, so prompting has a couple of terms here that we just want to define for you so that you don't get lost. So A is, what is a token? So you're going to hear this all over the place. We're going to talk about tokens a bunch. And you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to pull in a tool. This is a really cool tool. This is OpenAI has what's called a tokenizer here. We'll make sure that we have a link below to this in case you want to play around with it. But a token is basically how AI models break down information, how they break down text, for example. So to give you a little bit of an example here, if we type the word birthday you're going to see birthday is 1 token. Okay. And you know what's interesting is I would have guessed that this would be 2 tokens, which is kind of interesting. Typically, a token is approximately 4 characters. That's kind of the general rule of thumb. Different models use different tokenizers, and we don't want to bog you down and confuse you with a bunch of that stuff. But if I did a sentence like my birthday is this week or something like that, okay, you're going to see that this sentence here is 6 tokens. And the reason that we want to teach you what tokens mean, and again, you don't have to worry about anything from a technical standpoint here. We just want to get you familiar with tokens because the different models have what's called context windows and output token limits. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to pull up a model sheet from OpenAI. Okay, so these are a bunch of the current OpenAI models as of early January of 2025. So if I click on GPT-4o, for example, what you'll notice is we have 2 things here. We have a context window and we have max output tokens. So these are key terms that you want to learn because these are some of kind of the core parameters of AI models that sort of dictate, okay, how much can I put into the model and how much can I get out? So a context window is essentially how many tokens can we give an AI model to actually run some sort of task on. So you'll commonly hear, for example, maybe an entire book series. Like I think the entire works of Shakespeare or something is, I can't remember if it's 100,000 tokens or 1,000,000 tokens. But the point is when you get models that have bigger and bigger context windows, you can basically jam more information into them. And the way the information is broken down is in the form of tokens. So just being familiar with what a token is, what a context window is going to help you kind of understand how to better use a model. And you want to kind of be able to understand some of these terms, right? So bigger context windows mean more information that a model can handle, right? For example, some of the Google Gemini models have context windows that are like 1,000,000 tokens, right? So you can fit a lot more information into a prompt, for example, right? And then different models will have different max output tokens. So this is the kind of the flip side where instead of how many tokens can you fit in a model, how many tokens can you get out of a model, which is sort of another way of saying, okay, how long of an output can a model give you, right? So, if you want a model to write an entire book in one request, 16,000 tokens is probably not going to do it, right? You're going to want a model that has more output tokens. And so, this is kind of GPT-4o. This is sort of OpenAI's general purpose flagship model. And over time, we're going to get models that have longer context windows, have longer max output tokens. And so just being familiar with the concept of a token and sort of what that looks like in practice and what context windows and max output tokens mean for each model is just something you're going to want to be aware of. And it also matters because it is going to affect how you are charged. Okay, so this is where usage comes in. So if I pull in OpenAI's pricing, for example, you'll notice that the way they do pricing is they charge based on input tokens. Okay, so these are basically the same as the tokens that are going into your context window, and then they charge based on output tokens. So if you just understand what a token is sort of in the context of a prompt, you'll know, okay, this is how long of a prompt I can give a model. This is how much of a long of an output I can get back from a model, and here's kind of how I'm going to be charged. So when you're talking about prompting, that's kind of the one thing that we want to make sure that you are aware of there. And then there are also kind of 2 more parameters that we just want to talk about really quickly here. It's actually we really only need to talk about one, which is temperature. So you're going to see this if you use tools like Playgrounds or the different AI lab APIs. If you're technical and that's kind of how you interface with the model. If you're on something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, the Gemini app, you're not going to see temperature surface to you. But in this course in particular, we're largely going to be working in OpenAI's Playground, just because it's kind of the easiest one to get set up, and most people typically have a few credits in the OpenAI platform. So being familiar with temperatures can help it. And what temperature is temperature basically controls how creative or focused or deterministic a AI's responses are. This is a parameter that you're going to see across all sorts of models. Okay, so you'll see this in the Claude models by Anthropic. You'll see this in the Gemini models by Google. And basically, the higher the temperature is, you can almost think the more creative and varied and unpredictable a response is going to be. Whereas if you have a lower temperature, your response is going to be more predictable. It's typically going to be used for things that are a bit more factual, a bit more consistent. So this is great for things like code and analysis, whereas a high temperature is great for things like, creative writing, character role play based AI use cases, things like that. So that's really all you need to know. Again, all you should really take away from this is that prompt engineering, prompting is really just the language that we use to interface with AI models to get them to do what we want them to do. Okay, so it is basically just instructions in natural language that you give an AI model in order to get it to do a specific thing. Okay, I think I'm probably just kind of repeating myself at this point, but that's really all it is. It's not complicated. Obviously, the complexity of prompts is going to vary, but fundamentally, at its core, it's a very simple task. So that being said, let's actually jump into the next section so we can kind of get you up to speed on some of the tools that you're going to want to be familiar with here as, you kind of start your prompt engineering journey and try and kind of upskill here.